Good evening, all. Here once again, sending out that notification, letting everyone know we're present and accounted for. This should be an interesting topic this evening. I suspect, based on what I just got through reading, and I apologize for my tardiness, this is a topic that in some sense has a real connection to everyone, more than likely, whether we've gone through divorce personally or know someone who is going through it, or are children born to and living among those who have gone through it. This is not likely a subject that has escaped anyone in some form or another. I'm posting an article here that I really encourage you to read. It's quite enlightening, scary, to be honest, but quite enlightening. So it's 9. I did get on a little bit late, so I'll give another minute. It's later than I usually like to get on here. Let me say it that way. So I'll actually give it another minute for people to come on. But by all means, do check out this article while you're kind of waiting. Share this out. Share this out. I mean, you're on your Facebook pages. Those of you who are on YouTube, who may be watching this live or watching this back, you know people who've gone through these subject matters that we cover. Don't keep this stuff to yourself. Share this stuff out. I appreciate those who send me messages and text messages and find ways to let me know that these things are a benefit to them. I'm extremely glad to hear. That's why we do them. It's not about going viral. It's about trying to offer some information upon sometimes very, very sticky, very difficult topics that we hope can be a benefit to you. Can be a benefit to you. So, that's why we do it. If anybody's, questioning what's my motives, that's my motives, purely to get as much information into our hands as we possibly can. Now, the article, let's get into it. I gave the extra minute there. The article that I just posted, it opens up with COVID-19 pandemic divorce statistics. As a result of the COVID-19 pandemic and varying states of lockdowns all over the United States and the world, we may be in for the largest single year increase of divorce in decades. We will keep track of any reports and data that come out over the next year and report here what we know so far. Jurisdictions all over the world and in nearly every city in the United States have reported significant increases in domestic violence. Relationships experiencing problems are likely being stressed to the point of breaking by factors such as the lockdown, financial strain, and political discord. We won't have a full picture of the fallout until 2021 at the earliest, which of course this report was done in 2020. You see a graph there. Feel free to take a look at it. I want to drop down and look at point number 6. You can open up this article and be able to see it for yourself while you're listening to me talk. Point 6 out of about 80 or so, and I read through pretty much all of them. Point 6 says almost 50% of all marriages in the United States will end in divorce or separation. Almost 50% of all marriages, now they get into, breakdowns of ethnic and women, men, and social, economic, social, religious, social, political. They break it all down. But I want you to just catch that point blank notion. That point blank point. Almost 50% of all marriages, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of whatever, in this melting pot we call the United States will end in divorce or separation. Researchers estimate that 41% of all first marriages will end in divorce. Watch this. 60% of second marriages will end in divorce. 0.9, 73% of all third marriages will end in divorce. So 40%, 41% of first marriages, 60% of second marriages, 73% of third marriages will end in divorce. The United States has the 6th highest divorce rate in the world. And then it gives you the chart. I'll let you read that on your own. I think there was a couple of more. If I had a print, I would have printed this and kind of highlighted what I wanted us to see. Watch this. Okay. This is I'm gonna make this is public record. You can take a look at this yourself. These numbers are compiled from the CDC and several other sources, which they reference at the end of the article. Drop down to point 11. Now watch this. How often divorce takes place in the United States? Ready? Let's go. Point 11. Every 13 seconds, there is one divorce in America. That equals to 274 divorces per hour, 6,646 divorces per day, 46,523 divorces per week, 2,419,196 divorces per year. That means there are 9 divorces in the time it takes for a couple to recite their wedding vows. That's 2 minutes. There are more than 554 divorces occur during your typical romantic movie, comedy movie, which is 2 hours. 1,385 divorces, okay, happen during the average wedding reception, 5 hours. There are, here's what I want you to get. There are 19,353,568 divorces over the course of an average first marriage that ends in divorce, of a marriage lasting 8 years. And these marriages are said to last about 8 years. My first marriage was 7 years, okay? And the average is about 8. And now my first marriage ended in 2000, 21 years ago. Over a 40-year period, 67% of first marriages terminate. Over a 40-year period, 67% of first marriages terminate. Now, they break this down by age, 18 to this, and 30 to 34, and 35 to, they break that all down. I'm just giving you the numbers here. Among all Americans 18 years of age and or older, whether they have been married or not, 25% have gone through a marital split. What that means is they've been a part of it as a child or as an adult in some form. Then it gets into women, men, on and on and on and on, median ages. I won't go through all of that. Who's getting divorces, why, when? I mean, it's great information. Very telling information, to be sure. It breaks it down to occupations, kind of interesting occupations for the most highest divorce rates. Won't get into that. You can read that on your own. That's page 5 and into page 6. Let's see here. African American, non-Christian, baby boomers, fairly high percentages in my view, but I'll let you look at that yourself. It gets into median incomes. It gets into incomes and gives you the ages. Very interesting information. Military divorces. What I thought was interesting, point 34, is divorce rate among U.S. Navy SEALs is 90%. It didn't give any reasons why. It just says 90%. Interesting. Divorce rate in specific population segments, divorce rates among people 50 and older has doubled in the past 20 years, according to research of the Bowling Green, that's point 35, the State University. The divorce rate among couples where one spouse is in jail, we don't really need that for this discussion. It gets into same-sex divorce statistics. When do people get divorced? The average number of years married is about 8 before a first divorce occurs, about 8 years. January is considered. Now, here it is. Point 41. Point 41. January is considered divorce month. That's not funny, but it just caught my attention. People start looking for information before the new year starts, but they can't do much until the attorneys are back in the office. January 12th through the 16th, this is how detailed they are. January 12th through the 16th seems to be the magic week for filing. Again, January is considered divorce month. People start looking for information before the start of the new year. January. Now, we're in October, so you can understand we're approaching that time. It breaks it down why people are divorcing in the United States. Most list lack of commitment. In other words, that sense of irreconcilable differences, but just not getting along. 73% say that. Now that's them saying themselves. Argue too much, 56%. Infidelity, 55%. Married too young, 46%. Unrealistic expectations, 45%. Lack of equality in the relationship, 44%. Lack of preparation for marriage, I would imagine it should be more, but I suspect that they cite other reasons. But that lack of preparation for marriage, 41%. Domestic violence or abuse, 25%. But I get the feeling that would probably be higher. And it did go on to say that really some of these statistics actually come together. Some of these reasons come together. So there's a whole lot more there. There's upwards of 80 to almost 90 points being made there. So that gives you a real good idea of the fact that even though, as our write-up says, marriage, we're on Facebook. Some of you are on Facebook. Some may be watching on YouTube. But if you're on Facebook or Instagram or Twitter, things like that, where you can write posts. YouTube is a little different, but anywhere you can write a post, people, relationship status change, right? We all seen at least one, maybe posted one, new job, relocation, on and on and on. If you're single like myself, you get on dating sites, and of course, people talk about their relationship status. Some will mark divorced, some will simply mark single, and if you chat with them, they'll tell you, "Well, I've been through a divorce, but it was some time ago." It did get into the statistics about remarriage after divorce. I think it said 3 years, up to 3 years. People wait up to 3 years if they ever get remarried again. So again, what did my write-up say? Society at large seems to be for or pro-marriage. Even the LGBTQ plus community fought and won the right to legally marry in a growing number of states, which clearly indicates just how serious marriage is, right? In fact, some communities are so pro-marriage, they're so pro-marriage that single men and women are isolated and ostracized out of their midst by treating them as potential threats to their wedded bliss and assuming that just being single makes them homewreckers. I read to you the statistic that says infidelity is only about, and I say only, but relatively speaking, only about 40-something%. But you get to just simply can't get along, just not that's 73%. Now, it could very well be the people for some reason didn't want to cite infidelity, or they didn't want to cite money reasons or whatever. That's true. We understand that. So we take that statistical analysis and statement very carefully. But it's just interesting that now that I've been single for a significant period of time, it's quite interesting that most people look at singles, most married people, look at single people. And I'm in a community of many married people, in particular where I go to worship. And it's quite interesting, not so much them individually and how they respond to me, but it's very interesting. Just over the years I've been single, I've lived in 3 different states since I've been single, to just kind of see how people engage you, how they watch you if they find out you're single. Very interesting. But the reality of it is, as we went on to say, yet few can make sense of the alarming divorce rates, which I just read, divorce rate in the United States, where marriage is supposedly the it thing. Why? Couples are often faced with marital discord, and when they are, the immediate and most frequent advice is stay together. That's really what we're going to talk about tonight. We're not going to talk about divorce. We're going to talk about marriage. But I wanted to give you the divorce rate so you can see this quagmire, this very interesting conundrum we have, where we have married, stay together, be together. That's it. That's the game. That's the American dream. Whatever. And yet the divorce rate tells us, and again, you can read the article, and I'm sure you can find other articles that may break it down a little different. But the article tells us that up to 50% of all marriages across gender, across economic status, across ethnicity, are going to end in divorce in the United States. And of course, the article, as I read, opened up with, we don't have the statistics for 2020. In that article, they were going to have to wait till this year to track it. But we know, having talked to some who are in the business of psychology and psychiatry, that divorce rate has increased intensely. And the only reason why some have not actually gotten divorced is because, of course, we were in quarantine, we were shut down, and many lawyers and divorce court lawyers and judges and things were not operating at full capacity. But many of the counselors were getting calls because those marriages were on the rocks and potentially over. But I want to talk especially about stay together. Again, this is not meant to be a Christian broadcast. That's not the point. But you can imagine in a religious context that advice is going to definitely be given. Through my 3 different situations, I had at least one person, more than one, but at least one person saying, all gay, stay together, or get back together, stay together or get back together, stay together or get back together. Didn't matter what the nature of the situation, how many years, how much time had passed, stay together, get back together. So what about this advice? Okay. Now, even though you may be single at this moment, if you've been through a divorce, I think this discussion might be interesting to you. What about this advice? Stay together. Seems in a culture where we're talking about, in a society where we're talking about marriage is so important, it's so wonderful, it's so awesome. Obviously, being single, having had many conversations over almost 6.5 years of being single with women who would like to be married, or at least in a long-term exclusive relationship, many of them saying they would like to be married. That desire to be married would suggest that they see marriage still, despite their circumstance, as this wonderful thing to be. Many, of course, if you're non-Christian, this won't sound familiar to you, but those who are Christian, I'm waiting for a Boaz. Of course, that's found in the account concerning Naomi and Ruth, and Boaz, the man that marries Ruth, gave, I'm waiting for God to send me my man. I put a post up a Monday or so ago, talking about the fact that God didn't dispatch men out for the sake of marriage. Moving on. So seems to be a married-centric world, and get married. Again, the LGBTQ plus community has fought in my home state of California and won the right to get married. And we're seeing in other states, this is beginning to happen. So same-sex marriages, which is a very interesting thing to call it, since they don't want to be identified by their particular gender. But anyway, marriages of people who we know to have the same sexual organs, or however they're calling it now. Don't want to be offensive, but I really don't know. I don't keep up with it. So the reality of it is, why this advice, stay married, is not apparently being followed in my own life, as well as in the lives of up to 50% of all marriages. Why is it that as seemingly as important as marriage is, and my parents have been married 51 years. My grandparents on my mom's side were married until my grandfather's death. I'm sure at least 50 years, easy, 40, 50 years. Now, he was significantly older than her, but, you know, and their marriage was not necessarily easy going by any stretch, but they were married until his death. And she never remarried. She never remarried 20 years after he passed, if my math is correct. She never remarried. So we have this conundrum. We have this quagmire where maybe you never thought about it, but you have these single men and women, well, women in particular, but anyway, single men and women talking about, man, I sure want to get in a relationship. Yes, 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 yes. You have apparently married people, according to the statistics, at least up to 50%. And over a 40-year period, my parents have been married 51, but over a 40-year period. And I think that's so telling, because I have actually met people who got divorced after decades of being married, 20, 30, 40 years. So they were together over that period of time, almost 40 years, and end up divorcing. I think the longest that a person I chatted with when I lived in the Texas area, she stated that they were married for 37 years. 37. And she ended up running into him at a funeral or something of that nature, and he was already remarried not long after they divorced. Now, that's not my point tonight, but understand, think about that. 37 years. 37 years of marriage, which means not only are your kids likely grown by that point, but you are already pressing up on the potential grown grandkids at that point, or at least, you know, grandkids maybe anywhere from, well, depending on when, you know, if the kids have kids and all that, but potentially you could have almost teenage grandkids. 37 years, and yet ended in divorce. Now, there were abuses and there were other things going, infidelities and abuses going on, and she stomached that for many years until she finally had enough. She was trying desperately, from everything that I understood, to stay in that marriage. She was trying her hardest to stay in that marriage. Now, as you might suspect, this was a person who was in the Christian category. And given her age, which is much closer, you know, obviously much closer to my parents, I understood, at least in idea, because I heard that stuff growing up, stay together. I'm absolutely confident she was told that situation after situation, circumstance after circumstance, and she desperately tried, despite the fact that she was dealing with abuse. Despite the fact that she was being mistreated, she tried to stay with him. Despite the infidelities, she tried to stay. So in the final analysis, the relationship fell apart. And then I read to you, you know, first marriages, second marriages, third marriages, and obviously you can, as you would imagine, that, you know, the chances of a long-lasting relationship by marriage 2 and 3 and on decrease dramatically, largely because people take their experiences forward into the next situation. There is no point of stopping to do some reconciling with what has happened. And so they carry those experiences forward. It gets into children born in those environments. Well, I'm sure you can already guess that the kids who are born in those environments are more likely to themselves marry someone who also was of divorced parents, and therefore their marriages are in jeopardy as well. And I think it's cited, especially in cases where the parents were able to remarry others. So now, none of this is all statistical analysis, so none of this is automatic. I understand that, but those statistical analysis allow us to begin to see, I think the first point that we need to make ultimately is marriage is not as valuable as we keep trying to say it is. I think at some point or another, we're going to have to stop as a country and acknowledge the fact that you can't be talking about 50% marriages ending in divorce, all marriages ending in divorce, including in Christian culture and in religious cultures, and then turn around and go, but marriage is clearly valuable or clearly the thing to do. I think we have to stop saying that. It is certainly what some want to do. Now, let me say this, and I meant to say this in the beginning, but I wanted to get the statistical analysis for divorce out there. I'm not here to stand for or against marriage. I'm not here to say marriage is the only way to go or single is the only way to go. Clearly, I've been married and now I'm single. I've been both. And I can make a case for both just using my own life. There are definitely things I love and appreciate about being married across the marriages that I've been in, that I can just pull out certain aspects of marriage that I absolutely appreciate and you can't get. I don't care what you try to do. And it even cited those who live together. I won't do that. I won't, hey, blessed to you, sir. I won't do it, but it even cited the cases of those who try to live together. And unfortunately, I think some of you may have some myth or misconception about living together on the way to getting married. Statistically speaking, look it up. It doesn't bode well for you, particularly for women. I know it broke it all the way down even to women. And it doesn't bode well that women who live with a man before they marry is more likely to divorce. Read the article. Read the article. That's not my words. That's the article. So, and I'm telling you that because going back 20-something years in my life, in talking with people over the years, many tried to suggest to me, well, you live together, see, because that's where you can get a feel for each other, see? You get a feel for each other. And in that way, you really know if you can make it or not. And then those people who end up getting married, apparently, statistically, don't do well. Marriage is not the issue. It's apparently something that is in the interaction with each other. It's a falsehood to live together. I'm just going to be honest with you. It's a falsehood to think that you can live together and not be married and somehow buy a house together, buy a car together, buy property together, try to build a business together, have children together, and hope those things represent a marriage. Those things don't represent marriage. Marriage is marriage. Buying a house is not marriage. Having children is not marriage. So let's just get that out the way. You can't try to have a pseudo marriage by living together and think you got a marriage. And well, Gabe, some states are common law. Not that many. Not that many. And the fact that you would even play the game called common law marriage just tells you something. You should stop and realize to yourself that if you got to go to a place or you are so happy that you live in a common law marriage place, then you already don't have respect for marriage right out the box. So I'm going to tell you right then, why are you even playing the game with marriage? Why are you doing it? Well, we common law. We've been together 20 years. So we're married. No, man, don't play that game. Don't disrespect people like my parents who took the plunge, who got married and have been together 51 years, despite all the pains, the near death from cancer, all the other stuff they've gone through. Don't do that. Don't play that game. That's a silly game. Common law. Okay, whatever. So let's get down to some brass tacks here. The first thing I think we're going to have to acknowledge the fact is that marriage truly isn't seen the same by everyone, which is why you can get divorces. Obviously, if you're talking about 50% of all marriages are going to end in divorce, and we're talking about first marriages, and then it just jumps up, second marriages is 60-something%, and then jumps up 73% of third marriages. So that 50% is first marriages. That's not second and third, okay? So then we have to stop and acknowledge the fact that not everybody is seeing marriage the same. Now, it breaks it down, men and women, as I told you, and you can make a case for maybe it's men's fault, it's women's fault. I'll let you do that. But what is obviously clear, since we're talking mainly men and women, no disrespect, but men and women in marriage, it takes two. So if it takes two, and statistics show, according to that article, women are the ones who are fouling. It doesn't mean that women are at fault. I'm not saying that the article said it's women's fault, but it says women are the ones who are fouling. And I might venture to say that it's not necessarily women's fault just because they're fouling. It doesn't indicate whose fault it is. It just simply says that women are filing for divorce more often than men, which is probably makes sense, especially if they're potentially being abused, being cheated on, etc. But that's enough of that. So the question is, how do you deal with, for those who are married or those who would like to get married, when discord comes in a marriage, which we know it's going to come. If you've ever even been in a relationship of any sort, you know discord, fussing, disagreement, whatever you want to call it, is going to come. And the advice of stay together, stay together, stay together. What do you do with that when clearly we see when it comes to marriages, that advice is not being adhered to? Well, we got to ask ourselves the question, why is that advice clearly not being adhered to? Is that even legitimately advice? Is it really? A lot of people are saying stay together, stay together, stay together, but is it really advice at all? See, one of the problems with stay together, and I, of course, like I told you, I have people say, Gabe, stay together, stay together, stay together. You know, you gotta work at it, Gabe. Part of the problem is when you get that phrase stay together, just work it out, they're usually talking to one party or the other. Let's just be honest with some things. They're talking to one of the people in the marriage, not both. So we already can see right off the cuff that stay together as a means of advice is nonsensical if you're only talking to one party or the other. Saying stay together to the one who wants to stay in the marriage is even worse because they want to stay married. You got to get to the ear of the other party who's trying to get out of the marriage, the one who's filing the divorce, the one who's decided that the reasons that they feel are worth getting out of the marriage are worth it no matter what the other party is feeling. Not every divorce is mutual, even if one party decides, well, I don't want to fuss about it, so I'll just accept it. I've been through that. So the reality of it is, and don't try to ask me which one, I've been through that. So the reality of it is, if you have a one-party person who's being told stay together, the other person ain't hearing that, you're actually creating a situation of anxiety, of frustration. You're actually piling on to that potential person. Listen to what I'm saying. You're actually piling on to them by simply stating, stay together. I know you think that that's great advice because it makes you feel good. Uh-oh, there it is. What I have found in my personal experience is that when people start running off at the mouth about God, stay together, you know, other people went through discord, but they stayed together. Oh man, one man, he cheated on his wife 417 times. And Gabe, they still married, they stayed together. Well, I'm sitting there like, okay, telling me about what Joe Blow and Jane Doe did doesn't inform on anything that I may be dealing with or someone else is dealing with. Every single case is an individual situation. See, that's the problem. Every single situation is individual. So this notion that I could just give this one size fits all, stay together. Oh, I'm coming to you, Christians. You know, I'm coming to you. This one size fit all, stay together. Hey, you know, a family that prays together ain't even in the Bible. That's not even true. Because the nation of Israel would have been families that worshiped together, prayed together, and a host of other things. And divorce was just as much among them as it is to this day. Divorce didn't start in America. Divorce didn't start 250 years ago. Divorce has been going on probably since marriage. So let's stop being confused about some things right here. We have to stop this nonsense of suggesting, of believing that divorce is just somehow an American issue, or divorce is something that only happens in the last 20, 30 years. Now, statistically speaking, and it says it in the article, from the 1920s till now, clearly divorce has risen. But I would venture to say that in those same instances, and I've talked about this to many people, what you wouldn't see in the 1920s is if a woman is being punched upside her head, she's not likely to have left those relationships. Oh yeah, I said it. I said it. And in the 1940s, if a woman was being cheated on rapidly, she is likely to not have left those relationships because those would have, that divorce, that separation would have been taboo. Also keep in mind, women were not, generally speaking, allowed to go out and make money to take care of themselves at the level they're able to do now. Does that potentially have a reason or some effect on why those marriages lasted so long? Just because they stayed together, or you see where I'm going now? Just because they stayed together, did it mean that they did not have reasons like we see now that would have been justification back then for divorce? See, let me help somebody out right now. Somebody, especially some lady, needs to hear this. Don't let people try to talk you in to staying in a situation where you are being mistreated, where you are being used, where your spouse may be out doing all manners of things that are against the marriage vows, and because of your religious disposition, yeah, I said it, because you are told by your pastor, well, sis, just stay together, though he ain't never met your husband because your husband refuses to show up to the church. He ain't barely met your children because he don't want your kids to go. You can't show up to no programs. You can't barely come to service on Sunday. You might not even think to go on a Wednesday. And as soon as you tell your pastor whom you trust, well, pastor, you know, I didn't want to say nothing because I'm embarrassed, but my husband has been cheating on me. He's been doing all this. Well, sis, tough it out. God loves you. Stay together. What? What? Well, you know, my grandma, you know, she went through something like that, but she stayed with my grandpa, and you're going to get some special jewels. Nope, there's nothing in the Bible. I told you I'm coming for you. Stop lying. That's not in the Bible. The Bible does not tell Christian men and women that if you stay in a marriage where you're being cheated on, where you're being mishandled, where you're being manipulated, where you're being abused, you're going to get some special jewels in your crown. That is a lie. That is a lie. And I know for a fact abusive men over the years who actually never stepped foot in a church, but was so happy for their pastors because they're for the pastors of their wives, because those pastors kept telling those women, stay in those marriages. And those men were beating the snot out those women. And unfortunately, in some cases, killed those women. Killed them. Dead. In some cases, the woman got so fed up, she killed her husband. Instead of leaving, she stayed and she killed him. Manslaughter. Stay together can actually become an extremely dangerous bit of advice. Am I standing against marriage? By God, no. But am I standing against abusive marriages? Yes. Am I standing against the marriages where there's infidelities? Absolutely. Am I standing against marriages where children are being abused? Yes. And the wife is too scared to leave? I'm standing against those marriages. I'm coming tonight to stand against those marriages. And I will never tell you if you call me, and yes, I am Pastor Gabe Matthews. Well, Pastor Gabe, what you think? Well, what does he do? Well, she's doing this. He's doing that. Well, sis, stay there. Well, bruh, you know, God is a healer now. Stay in those marriages. And yet I just gave you an article that says no matter what, 50% of most marriages end in divorce, including Christian. Including Christian. Including Christian. Now, what's so interesting about scripture is that divorce was already understood, as well as remarriage. It was written into the scriptures. Exodus 25. Oh, I won't go through all of that. It's actually written into the scriptures. There is no passage that says these words. Hear me and test me on it. God hates divorce. There is no passage that actually says that. Oh, I got to do it. There is no passage that reads God hates divorce. You know what God actually hates? Injustice. You know what God actually hates? Mistreatment. You know what God actually hates? Abuse. You do it unto the least of them, you're doing it unto me. Saul was killing God's people. Saul was imprisoning God's people, and Jesus showed up, knocked him down, and said, Saul, everything you're doing to those people, you're doing it to me. That's what God really hates. He hates injustice. He hates mistreatment. He hates strife. All those things so happen to be legitimate reasons for parting, for separating, for divorcing, and leaving a relationship, even among Christians. Yeah, I said it, and I dare somebody find a scripture that disagrees with me. Give me one. I got a 2.5-hour video I'll send you right now that I didn't even produce. But I fully support what's been spoken because the person exegetes text extraordinarily well. They go verse by verse by verse and shows you where not only does it not say God hates divorce. Yes, divorce is not ideal. If you keep reading that article to the end, divorce is not ideal. Trust me, it's not ideal. I've been there. But on the same token, we have to stop laying on God, the creator of all things, what his word doesn't say. His word doesn't say he stands against divorce. Now, I see that, sister. You say it, well, marriage is not a human institution, it's a God institution. While that is true, but so is parenting. Parenting is a God institution. Parenting is something that God established. God, be fruitful, multiply, and replenish the earth. And yet, parenting in many, if I pull up those statistics, it's going to blow our minds out. Parenting is all screwed up in the world. And from the beginning, we see it all the way through Scripture. So why are we surprised if parenting is screwed up? Matter of fact, that ain't the only thing screwed up. Every institution that God put in place, let's just say it what it is. Every institution. Why? Because you only have 2 chapters in the whole book. That's right. Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2. So every institution from Genesis chapter 3 all the way to Revelation is screwed up. Every single one. We're not supposed to be mistreating each other. We're not even supposed to have dominion over each other. Nobody's supposed to have owned me or my ancestors. Nobody was supposed to own anybody. Nobody was. Nobody was. No one should have ever owned anybody. That was never God's intention. And yet, transatlantic slave trade. So when we talk about the institutions of God that are screwed up, every single one of them are, because all have sinned and come short of the glory of God. So for Christians, let's stop this madness like unrighteous people are going to live righteously with each other. Come on. Come on. There's a reason why Christians get divorced, because they are sinners saved by grace. And if you say you have no sin, you're a liar. It doesn't make any sense for Pastor Gabe, when you come to me with your broken marriage, to look at you like you should be holy and righteous and do nothing wrong. In every other area of your life, you're broken. But when it comes to your marriage should be stellar. Okay, how you doing with your money? I'm jacked up. How you doing raising your kids? I'm jacked up. How you doing on your job? I'm jacked up. But what's wrong with your marriage? Shame on you. You can't get a divorce. You can't separate. What's wrong with you? But every other part of your life is screwed up. When's the last time you talked to your parents? I don't like my parents. When's the last time you talked to your siblings? I don't like my siblings. So you haven't had a right relationship all your life? No. Well, my question would be, what are you doing married? Or why are you talking about getting married when you clearly don't know how to interact with people? Wait a minute, Gabe, what are you saying? A marriage is a different thing. No, marriage is interaction between 2 people. And if the 2 people don't know how to get along with other people, what do you think they're going to do with each other? See, at some point, people got to say the practical thing. At some point, somebody got to say the practical stuff. So I'm going to do it. You know me, I'll do it. It ain't practical to assume that people who never had a right relationship with mama, daddy, especially with the opposite sex, no disrespect again to the LGBTQ plus community, but let me talk like I want to talk. If you know you are a daughter who didn't have a good relationship with your father, or with any man for that matter growing up, how you think you're going to relate to a husband? If you a man who didn't have a good relationship with your mama, with your sisters, with your aunties, with your school teachers, mostly women usually, with anybody in the female in the community that you grew up around, that you talked with and engaged in, if you always looked at women as what you see on pornography, as what you see in swimsuits, do you really think you're going to be able to respect a wife? And then we come behind you and we have the nerve to say, stay together. We don't even stop to ask and try to figure out, do you even have any idea on what it is to respect the opposite sex? But the only advice we know how to give, and all the examples we tell you, is stay together, stay together, stay together. God can do anything. Well, first of all, God didn't put you together. God didn't put you together. So why are we laying that at God's doorstep, that God's going to keep you together, though he didn't put you together? And we get all happy. Yeah, man. You know, my cousin, yeah, man, she was stressed out and she was going to leave, but I told her to stay there. Oh, yeah, she took some abuse. Oh, yeah, she got whooped. Yeah, she got cheated on 22 times. She had to go get a venereal disease test every 2 weeks. But you know what? They happily married now. You know what I heard? When somebody say something like that to me, that man was able to go out, sow his royal oats, do his thing, and then maybe life got a little boring or tired or hurtful or painful. And then he said, you know, maybe I should be fidelis to my wife. So he got a chance to go out and act a plum fool and do whatever it is that he was big enough and bad enough to do. And she sat there, woe is me. I'm just hanging on in there. Oh, I'm going to be in this marriage. And I'm not trying to make fun of her, but the reality of it is she had people who sit in positions I sit in telling her to stay together. We don't have no other recourse to give you. Just stay together. Oh, he cheated again. Well, just pray. Just pray. Because you know prayer changes things. So just pray, girl. Just pray. I ain't got to go home with that dude. That person giving her advice ain't got to go home with that dude. And the same thing for men, and a little less percentage, but the same thing for men. Oh man, she's mistreating me, man. She runs me down. She questions my manhood. And man, I work hard for years and years. My father had a friend, obviously he's not gonna say no names, had a friend who was married for 20 years. He told my father he took abuse from, and I did meet them obviously. He took abuse from that woman for 20 years. And he told my father time and time and time again, when the last of my children graduates from high school, I'm done. And do you know, the day his last child graduated, he left. And they never got back together. She worked that dude. I heard it with my own ears as a kid growing up. She worked that dude over, and from what I understand, for 20 years. And he stayed so that he could be a part of his children's life. I won't even get into that subject. I won't even touch that tonight. But he stayed just so he could be a part of his children's life. And let's be honest, and see, I want somebody to talk to me. If you got sons, for some of my ladies on my Facebook channel and YouTube channel who have sons, who are decent men, who are trying to endure these women that they had children by. See, come on. I had conversations with some of y'all. I know what y'all told me, because you raised your son to be a part of his sons and daughters' lives. And so they're sticking and staying, and they're trying their best. They don't want to hit the woman. They don't want to abuse the woman. They don't want to go off on the woman. But she's taking advantage of how you raised him. And he comes to you in distress. Mom, I just don't know what to do. I'm trying to be a good father. I'm trying to be a good husband. I'm trying to be there. And all you know how to say is stay together. Please excuse my frustration. But do you understand what you're doing? She acting a plum fool, and she know how you raised him, because he told her, look, man, you really pushing me right now, but you better be glad my mama raised me better than that. And he don't even realize he's fueling her. He's driving her because he's giving her the ammunition, and you're up here supporting her. No, I support my son. No, you support her because you're telling your son, well, son, I know it's tough, but just hang in there. Trouble don't last always, and all these cliches. That boy don't need no cliches. Good night, son. That boy don't need no cliches. What he needs for you to do is to listen all the way through and stop trying to live vicariously through your son or your daughter's marriage by getting them to stay, because my marriage failed and we don't want a generational curse. And so y'all just endure because I didn't stay. God knows I'm glad to be out, but y'all stay. What in the world are we doing? What are we doing? I'm not advocating for divorce, but don't be giving advice because your marriage fell apart. So you just automatically tell your kids, well, y'all stay married. Now, you didn't want to have nothing to say about their girlfriend. You didn't want to have nothing to say about their fiance, about their boyfriend. But now that they're married, now you want to have a whole lot to say. Don't you let my grandkids go through that. Don't you let them go through that. Don't y'all, I had to raise y'all by myself and I went through all that. Don't you let your kids go through that because I'm going to be upset with you. Well, who are you? Who are you? You're not in their marriage. Listen. What are the particulars they're facing? What are the specific situations that they're up against? Do you really want to have the regret of your son, of your daughter going to jail for murder because they told you that they couldn't take it, blowing their own brains out? They tried to tell you, Mom, Dad, I can't take this. Aunt, uncle, pastor, I can't take this. They're coming after me. They're on me all the time. I can't handle this. I don't know what to do. I don't want to do nothing silly. I don't want to do nothing stupid. I don't want to hurt my chances to be in my children's life. And we just keep saying, I'm praying for you, baby. Now, I don't mean to just pick on Christians, but look, who are the ones constantly talking about stay together? We are. We don't have no other advice to give. You know what I recommend? Shut up. If all you know to say is stay together and you can't seem to hear past your own advice, how about you do this for me? Since I've been giving counsel to couples for years. Shh. Well, Pastor Matthews, my mama said just stay. Okay, the man beating you upside your head? Yeah. Is your mom getting beat upside the head? No. Is your dad getting beat upside the head? No. So then you the one getting beat, right? Yeah. You better get out of there. You better get out of there. I actually know a lady who literally got raped by her own husband. Got raped. And she said some of the most heartbreaking things I've ever heard. Well, this is some kind of ministry. This is some kind of ministry. She actually bought that old nonsense we used to hear growing up, that if you stay in those kind of environments, that God is going to grant you some special prize or reward. That's nowhere in the scripture. But let me not just focus on my Christian brothers and sisters. Let's just talk in general. What's wrong ultimately with that advice? I'm glad you asked. You know what's fundamentally wrong with that advice? It's very nearsighted. It's just a knee-jerk reaction to one word, and we all know the word. I talked about it over the last 2 weeks. Divorce. Something in our psyche, the moment we hear divorce, we immediately go, no, we recoil. We recoil. Come on. Somebody just be honest. The moment we hear that word, it's just like saying a death sentence, and it is. Because the word divorce is actually a death to the marriage. It is. I'm not going to sugarcoat nothing. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It was supposed to be till death do us part. But when you say divorce, what you're saying is death to the marriage. What you're saying is death to this relationship. Yes, it is a very serious word. Absolutely. Which is why you shouldn't be saying marriage unless you have really considered all the realities of marriage. Because as you see, Miss Smith well said, marriage is actually a God institution. Now, obviously, saying God institution for those who are not Christians ain't gonna have no bearing on you, or those who don't believe in scripture. Marriage ain't gonna have those words, God institution, ain't gonna have no meaning to you. I get it. but for a second, just entertain the idea. Why are we even calling it a God institution? Because what God is saying is, look, this is best life. Now, again, I'm not saying I favor marriage above being single, because Jesus didn't get married. Apostle Paul was said to have been married, but then at some point the marriage ended. Many of the apostles did not get married. Apostle Paul says in 1 Corinthians chapter 7, don't get married. So I'm not here to say marriage or not marriage. However, if you look at the statistical analysis, what you see is those who are married tend to live longer, healthier lives. Now, that's just what it is. It's just what it is. Now, I'm not suggesting that there are not obviously single people who are doing well, who are healthy, who are enjoying their lives. I'm not saying that. I'm not saying that the only way you can be happy in this life is to be married, because I would be sitting here lying about my own life. I'd rather enjoy my life, and I am single. Flat out. Single. So I'm not sitting here saying the only way your life is happy is to be married. But what I am telling you, when they look at the statistical analysis, that they find single person versus married person, single people, now watch this, who are healthy, very important, compared to married people in a healthy marriage, the married people live longer and lives. And I would admit, I find it hard to disagree with that. If you're in a healthy marriage, so clearly we're not talking about a toxic marriage. If you're in a healthy marriage, it is likely that because you have someone to grow old with, someone to help you in the times of need, someone you can be a help to, that yes, I would venture to say that life has certain levels of fulfillment that cannot be realized when you're single. And I've been single not for 2 minutes, not for 2 years. I've been single for almost 6.5. So it ain't like I've been single for 5 days. I've been single for years, nearly 10 years. I'm on the other side of 5, right? So understand, and I'm not in a hurry to get married. So don't think I'm saying that, okay, gonna get married soon. Nope, don't trick yourself. Understand what I'm saying, and I'm almost done. When we're looking at marriage, or we're looking at being single, watch this. Here's the real issue. Are you healthy? Mentally, emotionally, and if you are a person who is religious, spiritually. Let me do it again. Are you healthy? Physically, emotionally, mentally? And if you are a person who is spiritual, religious, are you healthy in that respect? If you really want to cut down to it, whether you get married or you stay single, the real question is, are you healthy? Well, one of the indicators is, do you make sound decisions? I've had conversations, yes, with women mostly, who tell me, Gabe, I want to get married because of my host of bad decisions. Well, what do you think I'm thinking when somebody tells me that? I'm scared for them. I'm extremely scared for them. Why? Because what's the likelihood, if they want to get married because of bad decisions, that they're going to make a bad decision in getting married? My advice is not get married so somebody else can make the decisions. My advice is get some advice on whatever the decisions you don't have to get married to make better decisions. Get some advice. One old saying says, in the multitude of advisors or counselors, there is safety. So don't get married to make better decisions. Just get some advisors. Because what if you marry somebody, and I did a whole broadcast on this, who makes bad decisions? Here's another one. Not just bad decisions, bad financial decisions. Bad financial decisions. Okay, hold on, same point. Don't get married so you don't have no more financial decision responsibilities. What kind of madness is that? Well, Gabe, he's got a good job and he makes a lot of money. It don't mean he's good with money. He just makes so much of it, you can't tell where it ends, because his next checks come, and his next check, and his next check, and his next check, or her next check, or her next check. Trust me, I'm not getting nobody's business, but I know people who make a lot of money, but they still live paycheck to paycheck. Done with that. Another subject for another time. I promise I'm going to leave it alone. Turn my mind off. Turn it off. Turn it off. I want to touch it, but I ain't going to touch it. So you're not going to repair what's wrong with you by getting married. There it is. There it is. The notion that if you get married, you'll fix those kind of issues makes no sense. As a matter of fact, I recommend don't get married until you at least admit and address and come up with some solution that doesn't require you to be married to address those issues. For example, take some money management classes. There are classes. Take some money management classes. Don't put that off on a husband or a wife. I cited to you the statistics. And on those statistics, I don't think I cited this, money, financial problems is one of those reasons why people get divorced. You don't want to marry somebody and you know you bad with money. You know you can't help buy that suit or buy that dress or buy that purse or buy that bottle of expensive bottle of cologne or take some ridiculously expensive trip when you know good and well when you get home you ain't gonna make all your bills, but you just gotta have a vacation. You just got to. I'm just so tired. So I gotta go spend a whole week in Cancun or wherever the world. I can't go to Vegas for 2 days. I got to go to Vegas for 8 days. I got to get the most expensive cruise possible. I can't just go for, I just can't take an overnight away from home at the Hilton and spend $80. No, I got to get a $120 a night room. I'm telling you right now, ladies, and I don't mean no disrespect. If I met you and express some interest in you and I find out that's how you handle your money, you ain't got to worry about me bothering you. You ain't got to worry. I ain't going to bother you. I'm going to leave you well enough alone. I have been through financial struggle. I'm coming out with my hands up, thanks to the Dorinda Clark Cole, and I'm not going back into that. Okay, how about emotional issues? How about mental circumstances? How about health? I've already talked about this. How about health issues? I did a whole broadcast on this. I'm not saying you can't get married because you have health issues. I'm not saying you can't get married because you may be dealing with bipolar, attention deficit disorder, depression, or anything else. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is take an inventory of yourself and understand that those particular things are going to weigh heavy on a marriage that could lead you to divorce. And if you come to me and you knew you were struggling with diabetes and you knew your diabetes was out of control and you went forth and got into a relationship and got married anyway, and you really didn't want to tell them, oh yeah, I take insulin, but I'm good. You failed to mention that your diabetes is out of control. Your A1C is out of control. You failed to mention about your high blood pressure being out of control. You failed to mention about your hypertension. You failed to mention that you're constantly in and out of the emergency room. You failed to mention, and you got married. By my account, you lied. And you put your marriage in jeopardy because now you're hoping that you're engaged. Now you're hoping that you're married, and we're going to talk about engagement next week, so I ain't going to touch it this week. Now you're hoping that because that you're married, now till death do us part. Y'all can't leave me. Y'all can't leave now. You got to stay married to me now. I'm telling you right now, I don't care if you're a Christian or not. I would tell you, point blank, Pastor Gabe Matthews would tell you, hey, they lied to you, yes. And they lied to you about something as serious as their health, about their financial health, about their mental, emotional health, yes. You have grounds for divorce. That is bearing false witness, and God hates liars, according to Scripture. 6 things, no, 7 things he hates. And those who bear false witness is on that list. So you think God is going to support you being in a relationship where you lying to people? You think God is going to help you save a marriage where you have no intentions of being honest and forthright? Come on. See, we got God all twisted up in the game. And for those of you who are not believers, I still say the same thing. If you know you lying about your health, what else wouldn't you lie about? If you're lying about your mental, emotional state, If you've had a breakdown in your life within 10 years of a relationship you're in, I think you ought to speak about it. Not because you're going to have a lapse, not because you're afraid of it. No, you should be able to speak about it in a position of power. Because guess what happens when a person goes, oh, you don't like this, but I'm going to talk about it. Guess what happens when you go to the doctor? And you got to fill out the paperwork. Come on, somebody talk to me. What is some of the questions you get? Does anybody in your family, you're married, have a history of? I took my son to the eye doctor to get his eyes examined so he can get some new glasses. And guess what was on the paperwork for glasses? They asked about mental situations, not just about health. They asked about mental situations. So understand, if you're married and you want to stay together, you got to do your homework. You're married now. Maybe you say, well, Gabe, you know what? I'm in this marriage. I'm committed. Cool. I'm with you. I'm with you. But I'm not with you if you're going to lie. I'm not with you if you're going to hide the truth. I'm not with you if you want to play like all is well, but we both know it ain't well. I'm not with you. You don't even have to call me. You don't even have to text me and say, well, Gabe, I would never come to you for advice. Well, then why are you calling me? Leave me alone. Leave me alone. I got enough to do. I'm training. I'm teaching. I'm doing all kind of stuff. I got a son to raise. I don't need you to contact me to tell me why you would come to me for advice. You ain't going to pay me anyway, so leave me alone. But for those who recognize I'm spewing wisdom right now, you might want to get in contact with me, especially if you're on the verge of getting married. Let's have some conversations. Or maybe you're already married and you see some real gaps and holes in your marriage. No, you ain't worried about somebody cheating or anything like that, but you got some financial gaps. You got some truth gaps. You got a whole lot of time not spent gaps, which is a big one. You guys ain't really spending no time together, no quality time at least. Let's have a conversation. Okay, if you've been through a divorce, you don't know that. Yeah, I do. I know from experience. I know what a sabotage your marriage is. I can tell you, and I'll tell you the truth. But this whole advice about just simply stay together with nothing else, no other advice, I would advise you to leave those people alone. Even if they're Christian, even if they're pastors. If all Big Mama can tell you is, baby, stay together, because I stayed with your grandpa, come hell or high water, and Jesus knows. Do you know that when a husband or wife dies, do you know that that marriage is over? Do you know that? Do you know that if you stay married for 50 years, and I know more than one, my parents have a couple of friends like this, stay together for 40 and 50 years. Do you know that once your spouse dies, and we all applaud, and we will, I'll applaud with them. Wow, you guys were married for 50 years. Congratulations. God rest them. But the moment you start talking about, I want to get married again, it doesn't nullify the 50 years you spent, but we're going to talk about your new marriage. That would only be right. It would be wrong to be sitting there with you and your new husband or wife talking about your old, yeah, I know you're married again, but I sure miss your husband. I sure miss your first husband, your dead husband. I sure miss your dead. I mean, what kind of madness is that? In other words, ladies and gentlemen, while God established the institution of marriage, I hate to say it, sis, but actually marriage is a human institution. What do you mean, Gabe? It may be established by God, but it was established by God for human beings. So it is largely human. As a matter of fact, the Bible clearly says when we get to heaven, we're not going to get married. You won't go find your husband. And I know I just hurt somebody's heart. But you're not going to go find your husband, because first of all, your husband ain't dead. If you and your husband both make it to the new earth, because we're not going to live in heaven, to the new earth, you're not going to go find him and do what? Get married again? No, we will all be single in the afterlife. So stop all that madness about, I'm going to go find my kids. I'm going to find my mama. I'm going to find my great grandma. I'm going to start looking around and this great cloud of witnesses. a number that no man can number and start trying to find all my relatives. No, stop that madness. So marriage is based on the earth. It ends when your life ends here. That's what the Bible teaches. So test me on it. See if I'm right. Marriage don't pass over into the next life. My grandmother was leaving this world talking about, God, where's my husband? And my mother told me, apparently God must have told her, leave that alone. Because she said, I'm sorry, God. My grandfather died about 20 years before she did. She died at 90 years old. And on her death, well, not quite on her deathbed, while she was in the hospital, she died at my parents' home. She was talking to the Lord, talking about, where's my husband? And apparently God said, Mary Pfeiffer, shut up about that. Why? Because her husband is not her husband. The moment Cecil Pfeiffer died, that was it. Now, if she chose not to get married again, well, that's it. Look, I advise you not to simply stay together. I advise you to go deeper. I advise you to look at what's going on in your marriage. If you're really legitimately talking about not being together, do your homework and really look at the relationship. And it can't be one-sided. If you know for a fact your wife or your husband doesn't want to be married to you, no matter what emotional game, no disrespect, but emotional game they're playing with you, do not try to save that marriage. I'm telling you right now, you know they're playing an emotional game because they ain't got no place to go. You know they're playing an emotional game because you're more worried about being embarrassed. I said it. I would never tell a person who gives me the impression they're more worried about being embarrassed behind divorce than they are about the true love and affection in their marriage. I would tell them point blank, you're not right. You're no better than the person who you said is messing up your marriage. You don't care nothing about your marriage. All you care about is not being embarrassed. All you care about is clout and status because you got 30, 40, and 50 years in. And so now your husband or your wife is looking sideways and trying to get you to get out of it. But you don't want to get out of it because you don't want to have to face the embarrassment. Yeah, I said it. Keeping your husband, you've been divorced 20 years and you still got your old husband's name. Why? Why? Are you doing some things that you're not supposed to be doing with that name? Are you claiming some things that you're not supposed to be claiming, knowing you guys ain't been together? Your kid's fully grown and you still talking about, well, I'm holding on to that name. Unless you're famous by that name, and even that makes me wonder sometimes, unless you're famous, what you doing with your husband's name? I even know people who are still maintaining their husband's name and they're remarried. They're remarried to a whole nother man and they're still maintaining their husband's name from their previous relationship. I'm gonna tell you right now, ain't nobody pulling no shenanigans like that on me. I'm gonna tell you right now, don't even come at me with, Gabe, well, I've achieved so much in my life and I want to maintain my previous husband's name because we built this famous business together and I want to, well, but then you and we ain't gonna get together. Go in and maintain your business. Do your thing. I don't need your money and I don't need you. Yeah, I said it. That's madness. And we can't figure out why 50% and second marriage 60-something% and third marriage 73%. Because look at these kind of things we're doing. Look at these kind of games we're playing. Now, hyphenated names, I ain't gonna get into all that. But maintaining your dead husband or your previous husband's name, y'all ended in divorce. You didn't like each other, but you maintained the name because your grown kids got that name. Huh? You didn't sit them down and have a candid conversation with them about the situation so that they would understand why your last name ain't the same as their last name? That is absolute, man. Anyway, I'm done. Share this out. Get this in front of as many people as you can. Look, we'll be back next week. We'll be talking about engagement. And we won't be talking about engagement, as you can imagine. Yay! Now we're going to be talking about engaged again and again and again. We're going to have a candid conversation about why it seems that some can't seal the deal, why they can't get all the way through to marriage. So we'll be talking about that next week. And I'm not going, obviously, I'm not going to call anybody's names. So don't be scared if we ever talk to, come on back next week and join me in the conversation. I hope this has been a benefit to you. Till next week when we chat again.